Revolutionary greetings, comrades. We meet once again on a red Sunday, the 6th of February 2022. We have agreed that every red Sunday or every Sunday, we conduct a brief political education on matters that are of interest to all of us, be it local issues in Zimbabwe, regional issues within the SADC, in the continent, and internationally. We are today looking into the coups in West Africa. We've previously done videos on the coup that happened in Burkina Faso. Last week, again, there was an attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau. We also did a video and promised that we'll return back a video. We did a video on Mali and promised that we will do a proper analysis on what is happening in Mali. This follows the position of the Malian government in ending ties, both political, economic, and military ties with France, including banning French as a language. I am Mabuto Nicholas Mapena, General Secretary of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. I want to acknowledge and thank our National Commissar, Comrade Ian Bidos, who took his time to do the research. So today's video that we're recording is based on the research that our National Commissar, Comrade Ian Bidos, did. He's a committed cadre in the struggle of the working class and the peasants. So we acknowledge his contribution to the struggle. And I know that most of you read our theoretical journal, Vanguard. He is the editor. He does most of the work in compiling and researching for our theoretical journal. The last one, I think it was published in December, and is busy working on the other one, which will be published in March. So we invite you that you should also read the theoretical journal of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, known as Vanguard. So let's get into what we are discussing today. The coups in West Africa in the main, as I've already said, that in the last 18 months, and as also pointed out in the last videos, that there have been a number of coups, military coups taking place mainly in West Africa. And we want in this video also to understand what is the role of France. To what extent is France involved in the coups that are taking place in West Africa? What is its interest? We've also previously spoken about what Kwame Nkrumah characterizes as neo-colonialism, that when we gained independence, what we call independence, and we only gained political independence, but the economy remained in the hands of our former colonizers. It does not mean that when we attained political independence, we also attained economic independence. It is not the case. This is why Kwame Nkrumah characterized it as a neo-colonialism, or the building of a neo-colonial state post-independence or post-majority rule. But of course, there are also minor differences in terms of some countries in the rest of Africa, how they were colonized, because in most cases in West Africa and other countries across Africa, the colonizers did not want to build a home in what was referred to as their colonies. They were simply looting resources, taking them to their own countries. Unlike in Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa and then Rhodesia, where colonizers lived side by side with the colonized. This is why the South African Communist Party characterized this as colonialism of a special type, meaning that the colonizer and the colonizer and the colonized lived side by side. You remember the creation of the homelands, particularly in South Africa, where were partitioned according to our ethnic groups. We will, at some point, as we deal with this question, as we promised when we discuss the question of languages, which we promised in the previous video. But let's get this because it is common perception, or the common perception is that if a military coup removes a government elected through the ballot, this must be a bad thing. It's a common perception that is out there that every coup must be condemned. And there is now a tradition is within the African Union that once a coup happens, we now know that the regional body will meet, suspend a country that has undergone a military coup, and the AU will follow suit, suspend that country, suspend its membership, and so forth. Of course, except Zimbabwe, which we have always referred as a Bond coup in 2017. Sorry. When Zimbabwe went through a military coup in November 2017, it was not suspended like we seen in West Africa and the other countries within the continent. Of course, we agree that in some cases, yes, a coup is bad, but not in all cases. And we demonstrated in the video that we did when we were discussing Mali. We used Libya also as an example when Mama Gaddafi, our great leader, took over. But the question that you are asking, which we need to interrogate if we are to analyze if a military coup is bad or is not bad, because the position that has been taken by the African Union is that in leadership, which we agree, leadership must change through a democratic election or through an election. But, and we argue here, that if a foreign power controls the economy of your country and also control the machinery, is that a democratic election? So what then becomes a democratic election? If a foreign country or controls the economy, it controls the electoral machinery. Is the outcome democratic? In the Zimbabwean case, a deep state controls the economy. The deep state controls the electoral machinery. Is the outcome democratic, or is the election democratic? To an extent that the outcome of an election in 2023, will it be declared democratic? And that all of us as Zimbabwean, we must respect the outcome of an election in Zimbabwe, in which we know that the electoral machinery is controlled by the deep state. Western countries and the economic community of West African states have condemned the coup in Mali. We said that the first coup took place in 2020, and the second, what we say, coup within a coup, took place in May 2021. And the Met original coup leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, assumed the position of interim president of the Republic of Mali. But we also acknowledge and note that even Western news agencies are finding difficult to suppress the fact that the coup government has widespread popular support. We dealt with this question in the case of Zimbabwe in 2017. It is a historical fact that when the coup happened, when the military rolled its military tanks in Harare, there were wild celebrations inside Zimbabwe and outside. And we did point out that the celebration was not welcoming the current Zimbabwean president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, but it was welcoming the departure of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. That was the context of the celebration. It was not welcoming President Emmerson Mnangagwa. This is why a lot of people, including ourselves as communists, were of the view that after the Bond coup, there could have been some transitional arrangement a government of national unity involving everyone that would have led to a democratic election, because we wanted first to ensure that the electoral machinery is not controlled by the deep state, that electoral reforms are implemented to an extent that an election is held in a climate that is conducive for every political player to participate. So that was an opportunity when the coup happened. But unfortunately, this did not happen, and the rest is history. So here we're making a point that which the Western media agencies recognize in Mali, that the coup that has happened has popular support. This is why if even the military government in Mali has taken a position that it has taken in cutting ties with France, in banning French as a language, and all the things connected to France that we mentioned in the previous video. A report from the government-backed United States Institute of Peace says, and I quote, Malians are so exhausted with instability and graft, they are willing to give military leaders, thus far free of the taint of corruption, an opportunity to address the country's long-standing challenges, close quote. So this is the perception by the citizens of Mali. And we've always said that part of the problem that we have, governments create conditions for the military to take over. We dealt with this question also when we were discussing the coup in Burkina Faso on what led to the military taking over. You remember we spoke of when the president, who has just been disposed, spoke of suppressing or defeating the jihadists in the northern part of Burkina Faso, and the military had made demands that the military hierarchy should be fired, resources should be poured into the military so that they will be able to contain the jihadists. But that did not happen, leading to the action that the soldiers then did on the 5th that they did. Then again on the 5th of September 2021, which we also discussed in the previous videos, that Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Damboya seized the control of state television and declared that President Alpha Conde's government had been dissolved and the nation's borders closed. We did an analysis on Guinea when the two happened. You remember that President Conde, or former President Conde, he had forced himself to contest for a third term, which was marked in violence and fraud, leading to the army again moving in. And in Burkina Faso, as I'm saying, a coup has placed Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandango Damiba as interim president. The coup brought jubilation in Burkina capital, with people holding pictures of Malian leader Assimi Goïta and assassinated former Burkina President Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara remains our hero. What is interesting here is how Western countries are selective about which coups they call democratic and which they support. So to them, a coup that does not protect or advance the economic interests of the West, it is not democratic. But a coup that seeks to protect the economic interests of the West is a democratic. But the one that does not protect their economic interest is not democratic. We will see as we continue with this discussion. Immediately after the coup against Thomas Sankara, remember in 1987, his murderer Blaise Compaoré won immediate recognition. And likewise, when Mali's first president, communist-leaning Modibo Keïta, was removed by a coup in 1968 and replaced by the French-backed dictator Moussa Traoré, who was to be in power from 1968 to 1991, there was no outcry because those that came in were protecting the economic interests of the colonialist, but in this case, France in the main. In Guinea, its first president, Ahmed Sekou Toure, demanded immediate independence from France in 1958 without any remaining control by France. When the French pulled out, they sabotaged everything. They left no money in the government bank account. They destroyed all records and they physically destroyed most of the infrastructure as a lesson to all other colonies, which might demand full independence. So, neo-colonialism, we've said you can have your black president, your black prime minister, your black cabinet, black parliamentarians, but you are not in control of the economy. And once you demand independence to an extent that you want to control the economy, and you say there cannot be political independence without economic independence, the colonialists will do what they did in Guinea. And the other countries, of course, as we've stated above, that they've gone also through this route. But let's also understand what then is the role of France. Because for us to understand the role of France in all this, we need to understand briefly its attitude to what we call its former colonies. In the past, we have said there are countries, mainly in West Africa, who still pay a colonial tax. You remember, I think it was the leader of the Democratic Alliance in South Africa who said colonialism was good and so forth. But in France, it went further to say you must pay a colonial tax, and they thank France for what it did in colonizing us. Yeah, right. Let's get to the first point on the role of France on what happened. It said there's what is called colonial debt. Colonial debt is for the benefits of France colonization. The newly independent, we put that in bracket, the newly independent, because I've said you have no economic control. The newly independent countries should pay for the infrastructure built by France in the country during colonialism. They colonized us in Africa. They used our resources, our minerals, our timber, our oil to build the infrastructure in our countries, and they demand that they must be paid for doing that. What nonsense is that? Two, the African countries should deposit their national monetary reserves into French central bank. The monetary policy governing such a diverse aggregation of countries is operated by French Treasury. Under the terms of the central bank of each African country is obliged to keep at least 65% of its foreign exchange reserves in an operations account held at the French Treasury, as well as another 20% to cover financial liabilities. More than 80% of the foreign reserves of these African countries are deposited in the operations accounts controlled by the French Treasury. The two CFA banks, which control currency, one for West Africa and one for Central Africa, are Africa in name, but have no monetary policies of their own. The countries do not know, nor are they told, how much of the pool of foreign reserves held by the French Treasury. It is estimated that France is holding close to 500 billion US dollars of countries' money in its treasury, and these countries are poor. And also to understand the question of migration, as we'll engage as we go on, is that the rest of the migrant community who are in South Africa, some drowning in the seas, going to Europe, mainly from Central West Africa, is that their countries are said to be poor. But France is holding close to 500 billion US dollars. It is holding it, says to be holding it on behalf of the African countries. And they are saying African countries do not have capacity to take charge of their finances and their resources, leading to many Africans dying in the seas, trying to go to Europe to look for better opportunities. Some of them coming up to Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa, looking for better opportunities. France allows their African colonies to access only 15% of the money in any given year. If they need more than that, they have to borrow the extra money. This is nonsense. From their own 65% from the French treasury at commercial rates. In March 2008, former French President Jacques Chirac said, and I quote, "Without Africa, France will slide down into the rank of a third world power." Chirac's predecessor, Francois Mitterrand, already prophesied in 1957 that, I quote, "Without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century," close quote. This is the attitude of France. And most African leaders, or anyone in Central, West Africa, if you want to be president, if you want to lead, you must go and get permission from France. If you convince them that indeed what you need is just a motorcade, bodyguards, but the rest, France will do whatever they want. What you want is simple to put on your suit, and go to parliament, open parliament, do what the presidents do politically, but without interfering with the economic interest of France. They will clear you and assist you even in a coup to say the military must remove a sitting president if the sitting president is no longer playing ball. Point 3. Right of first refusal on any raw or natural resources discovered in the country. So in the former colonies, France must have the right of first refusal or any raw natural resources discovered in the country. France has the first right to buy any natural resources found in the land of its colonies. That is madness. Point 4. Priority to French interests and companies in public procurement and public building. This is what France insists. And the leaders that have been installed by France must observe this. If you violate this, you are removed. A coup will happen. When a coup happens, it is said to be democratic. But when the military then stage a coup against leaders who do this, they will say a coup is undemocratic. And as I've said, there is now a tradition that once a coup happens, the AU will simply suspend because we have been conditioned to believe that every coup is bad. And we accept that there are circumstances where a coup is bad, that there are other circumstances where a coup is revolutionary. Point 5, exclusive right to supply military equipment and military officers. When we were discussing the coup, is it in Guinea, we noted that the current leader, the military leader, he had military training in France. We spoke about the officers, black officers, that African officers that are trained in France, in what they call foreign legion officers. I think that's the right term. 6, right for France to pre-deploy troops and intervene militarily in the country to defend its interests. And that the interest of France is economic. There's no any other interest other than economic interest. 7, obligation to make French the official language of the country and the language for education. This is what Mali last week or some days ago said, no, we are doing away with this. A position which we think is revolutionary, to say we are doing away with this imposition. It should be the people of Mali who should decide what language what official language should be. If they decide on French for whatever reasons, without any pressure from them, that's okay. If they decide otherwise, that's okay. And we'll elaborate on this point when we'll talk about the development of our own international language in Africa. Yeah, then out of 7 out of the 10 most illiterate countries in the world are among those francophone African countries. This includes Guinea, Chad, Burkina Faso, all have under 50% literacy. Then there is also, as a condition, if you want to stay in power, if you are a president or leader in the former colonies of France in West Africa, Central Africa, there's an obligation which you must observe to use France colonial money, the FA franc. Number 9, obligation to send France annual balance and reserve report. Without the report, no money. Reports are audited by the Central Bank of France and the French Treasury. And we claim and proclaim and celebrate that we are independent while this is happening. 10, no military alliance with any other country unless authorized by France. So there's no country which is said to be a former colony of France that can enter into any military alliance without the blessings of France. And this also must be understood on what is happening in Mali. You cannot say Mali or any country cannot enter into a military arrangement, say with Russia. France must veto that. You must apply to France to say we want to have military ties with Russia or any other country for that matter. If France says no, it's a no. If you go against their word, a coup happens. 11, obligation to ally with France in any situation of war or global crisis. Africans are obliged to fight for France. We can no longer agree to the military cooperation of Africa and the siphoning of African wealth by other countries. And we argue that France must leave Africa permanently. This is why we have defined ours as a strike against imperialism and a strike against the looting class, particularly in Zimbabwe and elsewhere. And the imperialists are all over, and they want to influence our governments. The majority of ECOWAS countries and large number of countries in the African Union are in reality French colonies under French control. This goes back to what I started with in what Kwame Nkrumah characterized as neo-colonialism. You can have your black president, black prime minister, black cabinet, black parliamentarians sing your national anthem, but you cannot control the economy. That is a neo-colonialism. We do not know yet how good or bad the coup governments of Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso will be. We are still studying them. But one thing for sure, they have weakened the parasitic hold of France on a large part of Africa, and we must, as revolutionaries, support them at this time. As I started by saying, that we have been conditioned to say it is bad for the military to stage a coup. We are the first to have been conditioned to say the military must stay in the barracks. Yes, the military must stay in the barracks. And the question, as I conclude, which we've asked, if a foreign power like France controls the economy, controls the electoral machinery, is the outcome of such an election democratic? In the case of Zimbabwe, we have repeatedly said Zimbabwe is a deep state. The deep state controls the economy. It controls the electoral machinery. Is the outcome, or will be the outcome in 2023, going to be democratic? We want to hear your views, comrades, as part of our Red Sunday. Please write your comments, share with us your experiences. And we appreciate comrades from Central and West Africa, mainly from the African Diaspora Forum, who have been contributing to this YouTube channel, sharing their views to us. I've seen some of their comments, even some WhatsApp groups of the African Diaspora Forum, when they were giving some background on what is happening in Mali, in Guinea-Bissau, in Burkina Faso, and other parts of West Africa and Central Africa. We really appreciate. Please share your views, share your experiences with us so that we continue to have this conversation. Please like the video and circulate. Otherwise, Amandla, comrade. Bye-bye.